The poet and spiritual writer Christian Wyman writes something like this. If you believe at 50 what you believed at 15, you haven't really lived. And by living, Wyman means, in part, having a relationship with God. I'm inviting you over the next few weeks to join me in some conversations about how Jesus changes our beliefs about God. Not just once, but again and again and again. The idea isn't that I'm inviting you to chuck just old ideas and to find something more relevant, or to tell you that you've read the Bible wrong, or that you've been reading the wrong theology books. No, I'm really talking about what a relationship with Jesus is like and what Jesus came to do in the first place. You know, Richard Rohr, I'm a big fan. Richard Rohr likes to say, Jesus came to change our minds about God, not to change God's mind about us. Now, he was specifically getting at an idea about the incarnation and about the atonement. And Rohr is really worth reading on that. I'm getting at something a little bit different. Yes, Jesus did come to change our minds, and I'm wanting us to think about it this way. Jesus came to help us realize that we're finite, and that in order to know God, to really know God, to know Jesus himself, means that we're going to have to live a life where we get stretched over and over again. Here's what I'm getting at. We're finite. You and I, we human beings, we're finite, and God is infinite. To know God, as opposed to simply know about God, is to be in intimate relationship with God. Augustine put it like this: the mansion of my soul is too narrow. Enlarge my soul that you may enter more fully in. That's not a direct quote, but it's close enough, I think, for you to get the idea. Knowing God isn't about filling up the finite container of our mind with all the right ideas. Knowing God is loving God, stretching ourselves, or more accurately, allowing God to stretch us so that we can receive more and more of the divine life, so that God can enter ever more deeply and ever more fully into the life that we actually live. You know, that's why Christian Wyman says, if you believe at 50, what you believed at 15, you haven't really lived. Look, real life is deep connection. Real life is all about love. The love that we receive from God, the love that we have for God, and the love that from God that we share with neighbor. And that love is infinite. There's never an end to how much of it can pour into us. And our yearning, our deepest yearning in this life is to receive in its fullness the love of God. But folks, we're finite. That's an infinite longing, an eternal longing, a holy longing, as Ronald Rolheiser puts it. Our spiritual growth as followers of Jesus isn't to arrive at the 17 correct ideas about Jesus and hang on to them and fight anybody who disagrees with us about them. It's to recognize that God is so great. God's goodness and beauty are infinite. And for us to get our hearts around it, that's an endless process, an eternal process. Jesus came to change our minds That is to say, to enlarge our minds. You know, growth, and that's what this is, spiritual growth, does have some growing pains involved in it. And so no wonder sometimes people listened to Jesus and got pretty mad about what he had to say. We're going to talk about parables. We're going to talk about some conflicts that he had. And we're going to talk about his I am statements. But I'm going to talk about one briefly today. And then we'll probably loop back around to it along with the other I am statements later. But here's what I'm getting at about how difficult it can be to let Jesus go stretching our minds, our hearts, our souls. You remember in chapter 6 of John's Gospel, you may not remember it, but I'll bet you remember it. Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Well, you know, everything was going pretty well for old Jesus there. I mean, he had multiplied the loaves. People were really thinking that Jesus was a great guy. They're following him all over the place. He had to kind of beat him off with a stick. But then when he said that I am the bread of life, and you have to eat of this body to know eternal life, and to drink my blood to know eternal life, that was just too much. That was a turnoff. That stretched some people farther than they were really able to go at the time. Now, I'm not condemning anybody for that. What I'm saying is that feeling of being stretched, that comes with this Jesus journey. And that's the journey I'm inviting you to take with me over the next few weeks. Let's walk together. Let's have some conversation. Let's hear what Jesus has to say to us, to show us about who God is, and let's together spend some time being stretched by love in the flesh.